There's no disputing that when it came to cunning and strategy, few could compare to the mind of Emperor Palpatine. It was his careful planning that allowed him to rise to power, and to do so standing alongside all those he would later deem enemies to the Empire. It should come as no surprise that the Emperor prepared for many eventualities, including his death, and what was to be known as the Contingency. Palpatine made it clear what was to happen with the Empire. In today's episode of Star Wars Exploration, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Contingency from its early stages to its results. To understand where the seeds of the Contingency were first planted, one must first understand the mind it came from. Emperor Palpatine spent decades devising a plan to rise to power, much like the Sith of the Old Republic era. Yet, he knew he could be so much more than those of the past. Palpatine saw himself, for lack of a better phrase, the eternal Sith. He despised the tradition of the rule of two within the Sith Order, in particular the idea that the Master should be expected to be killed by his apprentice. Palpatine possessed the belief that he was the Sith, and that his reign should last forever, and he took every step to ensure that. A prime example that comes to mind would be his ordered killing of Mother Talzin, who he considered the only entity in the galaxy capable of stopping him during what was, essentially, a meteoric rise. To sum it up, the adage of someone having a lust for power fits Palpatine perfectly. Now, once he assembled that power and sat on his throne, following in line with what would be considered a selfish belief, he wanted no one else to possess the vast empire that he grew. Now, in that comes the groundwork of the Contingency. Very early in his reign, Palpatine knew that he didn't want the Empire to continue without him. Thus, he began sending Imperial scouts to the unknown regions of the galaxy, piling resources into storehouses, shipyards, and laboratories. The knowledge of these moves were only known to the Emperor and a very select few. These individuals were also to be among the few to be spared from a purge, but we'll come to that part of the plan later. The first stage of the Contingency was centered around the desert planet of Jakku. As mentioned earlier, the groundwork for Contingency started extremely early in his reign, even while he was the Chancellor of the Republic. During this time, Palpatine had an observatory constructed on the planet, which featured a borehole straight to the planet's core. The intended purpose of this borehole was that of a trap. The plan was to gather all forces, both friendly and foe, at the planet for a large-scale battle, only to pour a collective of artifacts in the core to cause a planet-destroying cataclysm, wiping everyone out in the process. The next part of the Contingency would center around a person named Gallius Rax. It was during his first visit to the world of Jakku that Palpatine encountered a young child by the name Gallius Rax, who accidentally found his way inside the construction site of the observatory. The then Chancellor took on Rax as a protege, entrusting him with great responsibility when the time came. Now, that responsibility would be the hand that guided the Contingency. Then came the final phase of this plan. Under the leadership of Gallius Rax and Palpatine's other chosen few, what remained of the Empire was to retreat into the unknown regions and begin to form a new empire. Now, with the plan laid out, let's take a look at how everything took shape. Once the Emperor died at the hands of a reborn Anakin Skywalker at the Battle of Endor, the Contingency began. Sentinel droids, all possessing a ghostly image of the Emperor and equipped with different messages for their intended targets, were sent out across the galaxy. One of the first was Operation Cinder, which called for multiple planets, both loyal and against the Empire, to have their populations wiped out. Planets like Naboo, Mon Cala, Chandrila, and Vardos were targets of the operation, and while some were wiped out, few planets were able to stave off the attacks, but it still served its purpose, as now the Empire brought a majority of its forces to Jakku. Once the New Republic caught wind that the Empire was at Jakku, the stage was set to use the planet for its intended purpose. Yet, the disgraced Grand Admiral Ray Sloane took revenge for her sacking by killing Gallius Rax before he could finish the final stages of the plan and escape Jakku before attempting to destroy it. Despite this part of the plan failing, the Emperor's chosen few still managed to escape into the unknown regions, setting the stage for the emergence of the First Order. One might wonder why Palpatine would enact such a grand plan that involved wiping out over half the Empire he spent years building instead of allowing it to continue as it was. Now, there are a few ways to take a look at that, the first of which is quite simple. He was power hungry and selfish. As mentioned earlier, Palpatine saw himself as the one true Sith, and in turn, he was the only one capable of wielding such power. That's why he kept so many secrets from his apprentices, and it's even quite possible that Darth Vader had no knowledge of the contingency. So when it came to his death, his mindset would be, you are going to continue with what I give you, not what I built. The other side of the coin is also sabotage. If he dies, whoever committed the act would seek to rebuild the galaxy, and things like Operation Cinder would make that incredibly hard. You have entire populations from prominent worlds either wiped out or crippled to a point where they'd be insignificant. Whatever new power would try to rise, such as the New Republic, would struggle to gain any ground in that vacuum. However, what is interesting is we're still seeing new elements of the contingency revealed. As we've seen in The Rise of Skywalker, Palpatine was reborn and sought to bring down the galaxy with the Sith Eternal Fleet, enacting the Final Order. And the phases of that plan are slowly being revealed in shows such as The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and even The Bad Batch, proving that the vastness of the contingency is still growing across Star Wars canon. Now, as we close out this episode of Star Wars Exploration, I want to go back to last week's episode where we looked at the story behind the Death Star 2. I asked you guys, did you think constructing a second Death Star was a sound idea on Palpatine's part? Here's a great response from I Am Sam 322 stating, yeah, I think the Emperor was right in constructing the second Death Star. It was his last gambit to take full power of the galaxy before those pesky rebels destroyed it, really. He almost won, too. He probably would have if Vader didn't betray him. Maybe he would have actually won if he went with a different route, though I mean the definition of insanity, right? Now, to call the Emperor insane takes gall, but I can definitely see your train of thought. It is kind of interesting to think what would have happened had Vader not betrayed him. This week, I posed the question to you guys. As the stories told on Disney Plus continue, how much more of the contingency do you think will play out? Now, this is an important question to keep in mind as the last season of Bad Batch is right on our heels, releasing this spring. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, let me know by hitting that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe and hit that notification bell as well to get notified about all uploads when they go live. Until the next time, may the force of others be with you.